This is a chapter one little video sound recording I'm making really to help review for the test. And just some of the things that you might want to know, such as geography itself. It's the study of the world, its people, and the landscapes that are either around them or that they have created. The landscape is all the human and physical features that make it unique. A landscape might be man-made. I mean, it could be such a thing as a golf course or a lake resort. Uh, and the actual physical features itself might be mountains, rivers, valleys, some things like that. Geography is both a science and a social science. And what that means is scientists, geographers look at data on information and they gather information about different places. That might be gathering information based upon temperatures, rainfall, trying to see what vegetation may grow, things like that. But they also look at it as a social science too. And a social science is a field that studies people, and it also will study the relationships among those people themselves. And the people who are geographers who are studying it as a social studies thing will not dig or climb mountains or anything. They're just actually looking at maybe common bonds that people have in their lives. When we look at the world, we can look at it at different levels. We might look at it as a local level. Here, just in Hazel Green would be an example of a local level. You could go even smaller, like a little subdivision in Hazel Green, a park, things like that. But then you go to a bigger level. It's a regional level. And a region is a part of the world that has one or more common features that kind of separate it from other areas. The Rocky Mountains are a region itself. The Smoky Mountains up in Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, they would be a region itself. The Gulf Coast down around Orange Beach, Pensacola, places like that would be examples of regions also. But then once you get past regions, which can be in all kind of shapes and sizes, then you get to global levels. The geographers, um, they don't want to study the world just at regional levels or local levels. A lot of times they also want to look at big global issues and how people are connected all throughout um, the world itself, and how people maybe in Alabama deal with certain types of conditions and compare it to maybe people in Argentina might have the same things that they're going through. And sometimes you can compare and contrast exactly what they're going through and see if it might work in different regions. Geographers have lots of different tools like maps and globes. Maps are flat drawings. They're very easy to deal with. They're portable, easier to make. The only problem with maps is that like once you get closer to the edges, they get more distorted or they're not actually correct. A globe, on the other hand, which is another tool, is round. It looks like the earth. It's not distorted or messed up. But globes are harder to make. They're more expensive. So you've got a good thing with flat maps is they're inexpensive, portable, but they're not as accurate as a globe would be. They can also use different types of computer programs, GPS signals. Sometimes they just write down stuff on pen and paper. They might have a tape recorder to talk to people about different things that have happened. Those are some things they can use. They can also use satellite images. It helps with weather forecasting, which I'll get to in just a second. So there's lots of different tools that geographers can use. There's 5 themes of geography, and those themes are like location, place, regions, movement, and human environmental interactions. When you're looking at location, that's just describing where something is. And a lot of people get location and place, they think that's the same thing. It really isn't. The location of, say, Mount Rainier in Washington is West Central Washington, but a place might have a feature that is very unique to the area itself, such as in New York City, Times Square. That's a place. Uh, Broadway, a major street in Nashville where lots of clubs are, that's very unique to Nashville itself. So location's very specific, but a place might be something that you might have that shows that it's very different from other major cities. Regions or areas that share common characteristics. That could be things like weather. Another common characteristic could be the type of land itself. You can have very dry regions, which of course weather might play a role into that. But you also might have coastlines and beaches that are a similar region, like the Gulf Coast here in the United States. You also have movement, and that looks at how and why people and things may move. And that might be based on events that happen, like people may move away from New Orleans because it got hit by hurricanes a lot. People might not want to live in the Midwestern United States because of tornadoes. And then you have something called human environment interaction. And that just talks about people and how they interact with their environments. They may use the environments to grow food to eat and so forth. Um, when you look at location itself, you have two subheadings under location. You have absolute location. Absolute location is right where you are, whether that is like President Joe Biden, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C., because that's where the White House is. If you're using your address where you live at home, that is your absolute location. But there's also something called relative location. And that's just a general description of where somewhere might be. Like Canada is north of the United States, or Mexico is south of the United States. Tennessee is north of Alabama. Those are examples of relative location. It also talks about when the human environmental interaction part, that also includes, you just need to know the definition of environment, like it's the land, water, climates, plants, animals, all of that together is the environment. Now that was the five things, but then there's six essential elements. They kind of all come together, but they're also tied together because they share a lot of common things. So you have six essential elements of geography standards. You've got something called the world in spatial terms. What that's doing is saying, okay, mentally, how can I use maps? How can I use technology? How can I organize my information to figure out exactly what's going on here on Earth? What's going on that ties us together, not only as a community or a region or a country, but just as citizens of Earth. Another essential element and standard is places and regions. These are the physical and human characteristics of places, and they can shape how people interact. They can shape their traditions. Some countries may have traditions about certain holidays where they do different things. Americans have always fired fireworks on the 4th of July. That was one way of celebrating independence and war, because war was a lot of shooting and stuff, and we just celebrated like that. Physical systems, these are the things that have helped shape the patterns of Earth's surfaces, like the Colorado River as it was flowing from the Rocky Mountains, carved out the Grand Canyon. And this is a process that has shaped the Earth's surface. And that can even come from outer space also. Comets have hit and caused deep craters in many of the continents and the oceans. You have human systems. These are just like patterns and networks we have, like train tracks or airports flying from one place to another. They follow certain ways of going from like Atlanta to Denver. They don't want to fly over huge mountains. If there's openings where they don't have to go as high, they avoid storms. Interstate highways, things like that. And sometimes we build roads to avoid certain areas. You have environment and society, and that's just some things like how human actions have modified the environment, how we've changed wildernesses into new living places, or maybe we've changed big pasture lands into subdivisions, something like that. Then you have the uses of geography, which is pretty much everything else that's left over. How can we use maps to impact our life? Whether that is looking at a map and saying, okay, the tornado and the thunderstorms are coming from this direction. Are they coming toward my house? Or am I safe where I am? Do I need to seek shelter? Some things like that. And then you have branches of geography. You have physical geography, and that's our world's physical features, landforms like mountains, bodies of water like the Mississippi River, the Tennessee River, the Gulf of Mexico, climates. You can have a climate that's like a polar climate that's very cold, or you can have like a rainforest climate where it rains almost every day of the year. You look at different soils because different places on Earth have different soils, and in some soils, trees may grow better or vegetables may grow better. And like in Idaho, potatoes grow really well in the soil out there. They also have extra minerals because of all the rocks and stuff that have broken down over time and has settled into the soils. And also plants, because plants can be very specific where they want to grow. You can go buy a banana tree for Alabama. You can plant pineapples in Alabama, but you're not going to get good results because the plants will not grow in this type of climate. Now, you can take a pineapple and plant it in Hawaii and it'll grow, and bananas grow in certain regions. So you have to think about how plants interact also with the physical geography of a place. Um, we have hundreds of different types of physical features. Geographers look at that. They look at how it impacts our lives and how we impact it. Just like they built the Hoover Dam to stop the Colorado River or slow it down and provide energy for lots of Nevada. Well, it slowed down the river. The river's not going as fast, so it's had an impact on the environment and the plants and the wildlife that live around it. It's also had an impact on human life as well. Um, you also have a Greek um, geographer, Eratosthenes. Easy for me to say. He was a Greek scientist and librarian, but he was the first one who's kind of generally given credit for geography itself. He was the first one to come up with the ideas about it, and he's classified as the father of geography. Um, just almost finished here. You have human geography. It studies the world's people, communities, and landscapes. Because landscapes are a little bit different because generally humans, we make landscapes, whether that's a golf course, an airport, which I know is not a great landscape, but it's very useful to humans itself. So we also study like the crops that are grown, where they grow the best at, because we want to maximize as much land as we possibly can. Human geographers, they specialize in very small areas of study. Just for an example, a geographer may study how people in West Africa live and how they adapt to their environment. Now, they can take those notes and maybe compare it to people who live in similar climates, who may be around similar landscapes, and that they can compare and see how the people live, and they might could share ideas to the people in those areas to see if that might benefit their lives. Sometimes geographers can help design cities and towns. A lot of times they might come in and say, okay, they might look at an area like Hazel Green and they might look at traffic congestion and suggest a new road or expanding the roads from a 4 lane to a 6 lane road. They might say we need a stop sign or stop lights at this intersection because there's lots of traffic. They might suggest more stores because the population grows. There's lots of different things that geographers can do. They can specialize even more. One of the specializations of geography is something called cartography. That's making maps. And maps are really, really important because not only do they get you from one place to another, but they can help you pick out vacation places. They can help you pick out places to build farms and houses and such. But most of us today are used to Google Maps and just being able to put in an address and going along the road and following the map and getting us, to Dollywood, or if we wanted to go to St. Louis or whatever town it is. A lot of times, map makers use satellite images now to help because it used to be map makers traveled and they had to sketch stuff out as they went, and it was really time consuming, and map making was a really difficult thing to do back in the 1718, early 1900s. And you have hydrology. That's the study of water on Earth. And water is really important because water can cause lots of damage with flooding. But if we also don't understand water patterns, we might have crops that fail and we can't grow food. Also, we have to have enough fresh water, which is water without salt, for us to be able to survive as a species because the ocean is salty. And lastly, as my Old Spice thing goes off, meteorology is the study of weather and the things that cause weather. Weather patterns are so important. And meteorologists, they can use satellites, they can use Doppler radars, they use lots of tools to predict that on a Saturday evening we have tornadoes, and then a Sunday night we have a blizzard on us because we live in Alabama. Anyway, Coach Oliver, that's a review kind of chapter 1. Good luck, because we all need good luck.